You spent over 15,000 hours in school, but nobody ever told you what school was actually designed to do, and once you find out, you'll never see a classroom the same way again. School was never just about education. Think back to your first day of school. You probably remember the tiny desk, the rows of chairs, the bell, the teacher standing at the front of the room. You were told when to sit, when to stand, when to eat, when to speak, when to leave. Every hour of your day was scheduled by a sound you didn't control. At the time, it all seemed normal. After all, that's just how school works. But have you ever stopped to ask why? Why does every classroom look almost identical? Why does one adult stand in front of 30 students? Why are children grouped by age instead of ability? Why does a bell decide when learning starts and when it ends? Why are we rewarded for following instructions, but rarely for questioning them? Most people assume these systems exist because they're simply the best way to educate children. But history tells a far more interesting story. Because the modern school system didn't appear out of nowhere, it emerged during one of the biggest transformations in human history, the Industrial Revolution, a time when factories were replacing farms, machines were replacing handcraft, and millions of people were leaving villages for rapidly growing cities. Society had a new problem. Factories needed workers, not just skilled workers, reliable workers, people who could arrive on time, follow instructions, repeat the same task for hours, work alongside hundreds of strangers, and maintain a predictable routine. These weren't just workplace expectations, they became educational goals. Look closely at a typical school day. The bell rings. Everyone moves at once. You sit in assigned seats. Raise your hand before speaking. Complete the task exactly as instructed. Wait for permission before leaving. Then another bell rings, and everyone moves again. Sound familiar? It should, because the rhythm is remarkably similar to an assembly line. Now, does that mean schools were built as factories? Not exactly. Schools have always had many purposes: teaching children to read, to write, to calculate, to understand history, to participate in society. Those goals are real, but education has never existed in a vacuum. Every society builds schools that reflect the kind of citizens it needs. Agricultural societies taught one set of skills. Industrial societies emphasized another. Today's digital world demands something different again. The question isn't whether schools educate. They clearly do. The real question is this: what else are they teaching? Because every system teaches two curriculums, the one written in textbooks and the one hidden in its structure. The textbook teaches mathematics. The structure teaches punctuality. The textbook teaches grammar. The structure teaches obedience to schedules. The textbook teaches science. The structure teaches that authority decides when curiosity begins and when it ends. Psychologists sometimes call this the hidden curriculum. The lessons students absorb without anyone writing them on the board. How to behave, how to wait, how to compete, how to fit into institutions. These lessons aren't announced, yet they may shape adulthood just as much as algebra or literature. And once you notice them, you begin to see school differently. Why are creative students often described as disruptive? Why is talking to classmates considered a problem in one class, but teamwork is praised in the workplace? Why do exams reward finding the correct answer quickly, when many real-world problems have no single correct answer at all? These aren't necessarily flaws. They may simply reflect the era in which many school systems were designed. An era that valued standardization, predictability, uniformity, efficiency. The same principles that transformed factories into economic powerhouses. For generations, this model achieved remarkable things. It dramatically increased literacy, expanded access to education, created opportunities that millions of children had never had before, but it also left behind an uncomfortable question. If the world has changed beyond recognition, why do so many classrooms still look like they belong to another century? Today, artificial intelligence can answer factual questions in seconds. Information is everywhere. Routine jobs are increasingly automated. Creativity, adaptability, critical thinking, communication. These are becoming some of the most valuable human skills. Yet many students still spend years memorizing information they'll forget after the exam. Not because memorization is always bad, but because the system often rewards remembering answers, more than asking better questions. Maybe that's why so many people leave school believing intelligence is measured by grades, only to discover that life measures something entirely different. Perhaps the biggest lesson school teaches isn't found in any textbook. It's the idea that success comes from following the path someone else designed. Study this, pass this test, earn this qualification, get this job, repeat. For some people, that path works brilliantly. For others, it feels like wearing shoes that were made for someone else. Too tight, too restrictive, never quite comfortable. And maybe that's the question worth asking. Not whether school is good or bad, not whether teachers are right or wrong, but whether a system designed for the challenges of the Industrial Revolution is still the best system for the world we're living in today. Because the future may not belong to the people who memorize the most answers. It may belong to the people who ask the questions nobody else thinks to ask. And if that's true, then the classroom of tomorrow might have to look very different from the classroom we inherited. Most people will scroll past this, but if you're still here, you're probably not most people. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next rabbit hole.